Oh, oh, Lord Shinks above. Hey, do yourself a favor. Do not ever try to actually consume all creamy. It is not what the description in the Pokédex says it is. Oh, God. Hey, what's good, Joe? Soul here, and welcome back to the story mode. So at this point in time, it is just under a month away from the official Pokemon Day Presents for the 35th anniversary for the series. I'm sure a lot of people are definitely on the fence about whether or not to actually look forward to the 35th anniversary considering what we've gotten these past couple of years, but for the most part, I think they will show something cool. Maybe two cool things. Who knows? There is pretty much one guarantee we all know universally, and that's the simple fact that we are probably receiving Generation 10 at the end of 2026. Now, you guys know me, I'm usually never one to really delve too much into leaks all that much. However, there is one very important aspect that I kind of wanted to talk about today. It is pretty much all but confirmed by Pokemon Company themselves that the next generation of Pokemon at the end of this year is going to be Switch 2 exclusive. Now, for a multitude of reasons, I have very mixed feelings on this. There was a point in time where I was fully convinced that they were going to do what PlayStation and Xbox had been doing for years and do multi-platform releases for both consoles for a little while until they had essentially shuffled all of their player base into the Switch 2 before they finally cut production for the first Switch. Now, there is no talk or confirmation of any kind that they're ceasing production for the Switch 1. It's still going strong. They're probably going to sell as many units as humanly possible before everybody finally has one, and there is really no reason to continue production for the original Switch. Fine and dandy, cool. On top of that, there's still games that we are waiting for when it comes to the Switch 1. They announced Tomodachi Life for the Switch 1 ages ago, and we have gotten zero information on that. We just know that smaller but like semi-major games like that are still very much in production for the Switch 1, meaning there's still a reason to keep your original Switch around if you don't want to invest in a Switch 2 yet. However, it is very obvious that they kind of wanted to do a funneling situation much faster considering the fact that they already had major exclusives like Mario Kart World and Donkey Kong Bonanza for the Switch 2. Now, in the case of Pokemon, it was kind of a weird situation because Pokemon Legends ZA was always planned to be a multi-release for both Switch 1 and Switch 2. The game had already been built for Switch 1 but inevitably enhanced for the Switch 2 throughout the course of 2024, or at least that's, the likely assumption. This is kind of the precise situation I thought that they would be going for a little while longer, considering the fact that, again, they have multiple teams spread throughout Game Freak developing mainline Pokemon games. So I figured it was at the very least a shoo-in for the next 3 years of mainline titles that we would also get those games on Switch 1 as well as Switch 2. For whatever reason, this could not be farther from the case. They are getting right to business, getting everyone they possibly can over to the Switch 2 with the next major Pokemon release, which, for Nintendo is one of their biggest. That is one of their heavy hitters. So, you can't really be surprised that they're doing something like that. Now, me personally, I could see some good aspects about this and also some very bad aspects about this. Whether there's more good than bad, that's what we're here to talk about, right? Take it apart fully and put it right back together again because you know the drill very well by now. Why don't you go ahead, sit down, grab a nice cold glass of milk. It's probably like dinner time for you right now. Why don't you go ahead, get yourself a nice chestpin ankle sandwich with a side of chips with some barbecue sauce to dip that in while we go ahead and talk about the good and bad aspects of potentially becoming exclusive to Switch 2 when it comes to Pokemon. As far as the good goes, the first thing that comes to mind is at the very least a decent improvement on guaranteed function. For whatever reason, almost exclusively during the Switch 1 era, there was a major problem when it came to general functionality with these games. Things were choppy, animation wasn't that great, frame rate kinda sucked. Pop-in was really bad. For whatever reason, there was just always some weird major issue with a lot of these games. We figured that by the time we got the Switch 2, we could see a major improvement on this front, and we could actually see some very high quality Pokemon games going forward. Anybody could say whatever they want about Pokemon Legends ZA, but the one thing that we all cannot argue about is the fact that this game is easily one of the best functioning games in the entirety of the home console era. At the very least, when it comes to the Switch 2 edition at least, I barely had so much as a frame dip, not a single stutter throughout both of my playthroughs, and the entire time I was having a good time, not having to worry about that, loading times weren't all that stressful, and it was just generally a very smooth playthrough all around. Again, from what I've heard personally from people I know that have played the Switch 1 version, they say it runs relatively smooth. It's not at the fresh, crisp 60 frames that we have on Switch 2, but it functions just perfectly enough for them to not really have too much of an issue with it, which says a lot, right? Otherwise though, there's just generally not much of a debate to be had that the Switch 2 edition of Legends EA is just the best way to experience the game. I imagine that with the Switch 2 kit and with their practice of Legends EA, they finally had the time to really learn how to properly optimize these games so that going forward they can actually take full advantage of all of the Switch 2's capabilities and give us much more high quality games and things like that. And again, this is not me blaming the Switch 1 for the downfalls of certain Pokemon games on that console, but we are playing with much more power this time around, and I think this is the best time to utilize said power. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good or bad the console is, the optimization comes down completely to the developers, so hopefully we have a better handle on that going forward. Next to that, in a very similar vein, I mentioned that the potential for graphical capabilities are way up. A lot of the games that we have seen ported over to the Switch 2 so far have strictly been to be like a technical showcase of what the Switch 2 is capable of, right? One would think that it should be damn near impossible to run something like Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade or Cyberpunk 2077 on this handheld home console hybrid situation, but they have managed to do that on both fronts. Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade comes out like this week. Now obviously a lot of developers, especially on the Nintendo Switch 2, worked around graphical capabilities by properly stylizing their games so that they had a unique look to make them look better, right? Tears of the Kingdom, Breath of the Wild, obviously. Mario & Luigi Brothership, despite how you feel about that game, that's a good looking game, you know? Luigi's Mansion 3, Metroid Dread. There's a lot of beautiful looking games on Switch 1. I'd even argue that Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee is one of the better looking games. Now obviously when it comes to Pokemon Legends EA, I think most people will probably agree that they did not reach their technical peak when it came to Pokemon Legends EA in terms of graphical capabilities. That much is very obvious. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that they were doing a lot of corner cutting for the Switch 1 edition of the game so that when they were developing the Switch 2 upgrade, they could actually have a lot of time to optimize and make the game run and at least look a little bit smoother. Working exclusively with the Switch 2 hardware for this brand new game means that they probably don't have to do as much corner cutting, and with that extra year of development time, they probably had a lot more time for general optimization and graphical capability upgrades. So they are probably very hopefully taking advantage of that. Like I said, the potential is way up. It's just how they go about actually utilizing said potential. So no more flat walls ever again. Is that too much to ask? I don't know. And lastly, on the side of good, it seems that for the most part, online capabilities seem potentially higher quality than we've ever seen. For the most part, whenever I played online in Legends EA, I didn't really have any issues playing online, not even so much as a stutter. I could be misremembering, of course, and I'm not saying that this is the case for everybody, but I personally have not had that much of an issue playing online. And this isn't exclusive to just Legends EA. Whenever I was playing online in like Mario Kart World or Mario Party Jamboree or Kirby Air Riders, I've rarely had any issues online. It runs so weirdly smooth, it almost feels impossible. Granted, when it comes to like generational titles like Generation 10, online play is going to be a lot more stagnant, a lot more slower, and is going to revolve specifically around trading Pokemon or battling against each other in turn-based combat. So it's not that online capabilities are going to be the strongest thing ever. However, when it comes to other titles like more Legends titles, if we're utilizing the same like situation that we had in Legends EA, in which we're utilizing action-based combat, we might see a situation in which we're going to be utilizing online a lot more often. And if it's not stuttering or having any major issues, that's nothing short of a good thing. And this is to say, like, who knows what they could do with this possibility. If we don't have too many issues with playing online and things like that, if it's not too stressful on the servers, maybe we could have a situation in which we do have like mini games and stuff like that that we could play with friends, whether it be like racing Pokemon into themselves or playing some weird random mini games, whatever they happen to come up with for Generation 10 or beyond, whatever. I'm just saying, as examples, we could see more from these online capabilities, and that would be nothing short of amazing if we could take advantage of that. Of course, that could just be me reaching and dreaming just a little too far out, but for the most part, you never really know. Like Nintendo, Pokemon, Kings of Left Field. You never know what's going to come next. So that just about wraps it up for the general positives. Let's go ahead and flip it over to the potential negatives. First and foremost, the biggest issue is the fact that a lot of people are going to be pissed because they are going to be locked out of Pokemon. Around November, we had heard that the Switch had sold around like 12 million units or so. After the Christmas and like holiday season, I think it's safe to assume that we're probably around the like 13, 14, maybe even 15 million range, generally speaking. Another thing we know though is the fact that Switch 2 sales slowed down drastically even by the end of the year. Granted, general sales for things have just gotten worse over the years, like 9 times out of 10, a sale is not really worth it. So when it comes to hardware, especially from like Nintendo, who's always historically been bad with sales, yeah, it's no mystery as to why that happened. Apparently, a lot of major companies have a hard time doing very basic math. Economy getting worse means consumers need to pay more for general living expenses. More money towards food, groceries, and bills means less money toward electronics and hardware. Which means that if you're not lowering the price for a decent amount of time to an affordable price for people, they're not gonna go out of their way because it's the same as any other day. It's still too expensive. Long story short, because of this very situation, a lot of people are perfectly fine just sticking with the Switch 1 as long as humanly possible, because they don't have a reason to go out of the way to get the Switch 2. In reality, while I do myself enjoy the Switch 2 for what it is, there's not really that much of a reason to go out and get it right now, because the games that are exclusive to it, extremely hit or miss for most people. They don't have that super heavy hitter on there right now that's making it so that everybody needs to have one. We don't have a major Smash. We don't have that major 3D Mario yet. As much as I do love Donkey Kong, it doesn't hold the same weight. Let's be completely honest with ourselves. And even with the case of Pokemon, there's still a lot of people that are very hit or miss with the modern titles. And when it comes to Legends EA specifically, it released on both consoles. So even then, there was really no reason for a lot of people to go out of their way to get a Switch 2 when it was cheaper and, you know, available on Switch 1, a console that they already owned. The Switch 1 has a general owner base of like over 150 million at this point. It's been out for 8 years, so there's really no surprise as to why that is. The Switch 1 is a solid console with a very solid library of games, with the added gimmick of being a cross-hybrid handheld and home console. A lot of people were very much with that concept because people are busy nowadays. They are on the go constantly. They want to have their Switch with them available at all times, which is why it was so generally appealing. The Switch 2 is the exact same thing. It's just way stronger. And you can believe what you want to believe, but for most people, that is not enough of a reason to just go out and buy the new shiny toy. Especially when getting everything all together, it's upward of $500 to $600. It's not an easy economy to drop that kind of money on right now, man. Which is why I don't think Nintendo is allowed to be any form of surprised as to why the Switch 2 probably didn't sell all that well this last holiday season. So, when that pertains to Pokemon, I'm a little concerned. Obviously, when it comes to companies, I have no doubt in my mind that both Pokemon Company and Nintendo are really praying that this major release for the holiday season for Generation 10 is going to help push Switch 2 sales by a wide margin. Maybe I'm underestimating it, but I feel like they are also overestimating how many people are going to go out of their way to purchase a $500+ console to get the shiny new Pokemon game, because not a lot of people even did that for Legends EA, I don't think. I mean, granted, there was like a Switch 2 bundle, so I'm sure that helped a little bit, but I can't imagine by how much, you know what I mean? Either way, I have to imagine now that they have it in their mind that making Generation 10 Switch 2 exclusive is going to be a major win for them. But I'm not entirely sure how big they think that's gonna be. You gotta understand here, there is a player base, a very massive player base of like at minimum 115 million people that do not have a Switch 2. meaning that they are hoping to close that gap a little bit more, or a lot more, with this release. But we don't know how much damage that's gonna do. We don't know how much of a gap that's actually gonna close. And right now, the AAA gaming space is looking rougher and rougher by the year, to the point where people will gladly skip out on major releases until they're either affordable or they just get generally better and higher quality and more worth the time. Or, you know, cheaper. But either way, it's not going to be big enough to close that massive of a gap all on its own. Maybe depending on the releases that we get this year, if we get some kind of a Smash, which seems pretty much impossible at this point, or something else to like really help close that gap, I don't think Pokemon in of itself is going to do that all on its own. But I don't know, maybe I could be underestimating it. Who really knows? Speaking of expenses, that kind of leads me into my next point. Being Switch 2 exclusive means that even if you do go out of your way to pay for a $500-600 console, you are still paying $50 minimum if they give out a bundle, which they probably will, but if not, then we're looking at a minimum $70 charge, potentially even $80, just because it's Pokemon. Here's my thing. The concepts in Mario Kart World are very cool. It's a very polished game. It's got a nice roster on it. It's got some really cool tracks and ideas and gameplay elements that are really, really neat. However, it is lacking in way too many areas and way too much general content to be considered worth $80. There is no universe in which Mario Kart World is worth $80. A majority of the people that probably even own the game only have it because they got the bundle that came with it. I am one of those people. I don't know if I would have spent $80 on Mario Kart World in of itself if that bundle wasn't a thing. They charged people $80 for Mario Kart World, not because they think that the quality is high enough to justify it, but because it's Mario Kart and they thought that they could shell out a lot more out of people. And to an extent, they were kind of right. People were suckered into it because it is Mario Kart, but at the same time, you know, people weren't necessarily happy about that fact. That's way too expensive. They were already really pushing it with the $70 minimum. 80 is way too much. So when it comes to the possibility of a Pokemon game that is developed exclusively for Switch 2, that's probably going to be at least a little bit higher quality, hopefully, you know, knock on wood, you know, I can't help but imagine a very similar situation there as well. They are really trying to push that bar, and they are not really trying to hide that. They didn't push it as much with something like Donkey Kong Bonanza, which still sat at like $70, which is still pretty pricey. But with a guaranteed mountain mover like Pokemon, man, I just would not be shocked if we did see that $80 price tag. Or hey, maybe by some miracle they decide to just make it a flat 70. Hey, cool dandy, I don't think that they've earned that right yet. And I think a lot of people can definitely agree that there is no Pokemon game on Earth even worth $60, let alone the full 70. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, it's not looking great in the price department either. And then lastly, based on the model that they've been following since like Sword and Shield for the most part, DLC is always going to be a thing, and at minimum, it's always going to add on to the total price. Probably like $30, maybe even potentially $40 minimum. Who knows at this point? $30 was way too much for Mega Dimension. I don't care how many side quests it added. I don't care how many Pokemon were added. It was way too repetitive and not strong enough to justify another full $30 out of people. That is ridiculous, brother. Like, how is this only $5 less than the expansion pass for Scarlet and Violet? A DLC that at the very least added 2 new major areas to explore with a significant amount of Pokemon added and story as well, with new mechanics too. How are these even within the same ballpark, respectfully? I really just hope that Pokemon Legends EA was their testing grounds to see what kind of feedback and reactions they would get to how they price things, because at this point in time, I think that most people can agree, despite how we felt about the game, whether it was good or bad, it was way too expensive overall. There is no universe in which Pokemon Legends EA for the entire experience is $100. There's no genuine way. And even if Generation 10 turns out to be one of the most beautiful, well-crafted Pokemon games we've ever seen, like I said earlier, I don't think they've earned the right to milk us for even more than they already are in terms of pricing when it comes to those games, because all of the Pokemon games that we've had up to this point are barely worth their price. So going up any more than we already have is just, you're asking the box, bro, like straight up, because this is getting absolutely ridiculous. Maybe I'm being dramatic, maybe I'm thinking way too hard about a situation like this, but given the last couple of years in terms of AAA gaming in general, I don't think I'm being all that crazy about this. In fact, I don't even know if I'm being crazy enough about this, because yeah, we're looking at a very real reality in which we're paying like $115, maybe $20 for the entire experience for the next generation of Pokemon, just because they know they can get away with selling that kind of game for that price, for like $80. You know what I'm saying? And I don't know, that's a really, really scary thought, because I don't know, man. Companies have gotten just so comically greedy over the last couple of years that it just seems to be getting more and more dire. And you know, with Pokemon likely becoming Switch 2 exclusive, you know, they have their tactics about how they go about things, but you know, as of right now, I think it's very obvious that the negatives outweigh the positives, and I don't think that it's a generally good idea to make it so that Pokemon is Switch 2 exclusive just yet, right? I still obviously want them to take advantage of the fact that they're playing with more power and they can operate on a much higher level because of that power, but at the same time, making it so that, you know, you're trying to funnel everybody all at once into this new console, it's too much of a rush job. You're expecting and asking way too much of the consumer right now. It's very clear to me that they're super antsy to funnel that player base over as quickly as humanly possible so that they could stop production on the Switch 1 and not have to worry about it anymore. But in reality, you know, that thing is a monster. It's sold just too much to completely ignore right now. So I don't know. I guess we'll just have to see what happens with this this next coming year when it comes to Nintendo, because yeah, it's gonna get kind of weird, but hey, you know what? Maybe that's just me. So that just about does it for this one. If I sound a little off, I apologize. I had to switch back to my previous mic for a little bit. I'm using my Yeti as opposed to my Shure, whatever, because I'm having a arm situation. Not my arm, the boom arm. It won't sit still and I can't hold the mic. It's a weird issue right now that I'll figure out a solution for down the line. But right now, we're gonna have to work with what we got. And the Yeti, it's got its own stand. It's nice and stable. I don't have to touch it. It's perfect. So we'll get back to higher quality mic stuff whenever I can, but the train chugs along. So that being said, I've said my piece. I'm passing the mic over to you guys, and I want you guys to tell me everything that you're thinking in the comment section below. Do you agree with me that it just simply feels like it might be a little too soon for us to have Pokemon as a Switch 2 exclusive? We're funneling out, or we're completely like blocking out an entire massive player base of people that simply don't have the means to get a Switch 2 right now, or even potentially a reason to, because there's simply not enough to justify buying a Switch 2 on, you know, like frame one right now? Or are you on the opposing side? I'm being a little dramatic about this. There's nothing to really think too much about. People are just going to end up buying Pokemon anyway, and potentially even, you know, they're going to sell us a bundle of some sort that's going to help funnel over a lot of people into getting a Switch 2 throughout this year. Tell me everything that you guys are thinking in the comment section below, because you know for a fact that I'm always going to be down there with you guys. But with that, it does appear to be skedaddle o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and do just that. I'd like to thank you guys ever so much for watching. I truly do hope you enjoyed. Do me the greatest favor of dropping a like and a comment, and consider subscribing for more content just like this here. And with that, I'm gone. So thanks again, hope you enjoyed, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video. Do me the greatest favor of taking good ass care, and I'll see you all next time.